Welcome to the Law Firm Growth Podcast, where we share the latest tips, tactics, and strategies for scaling your practice from the top experts in the world of growing law firms. Are you ready to take your practice to the next level? Let's get started.
All right, everybody. Welcome back to the Law Firm Growth Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Jan Roos, and I am here today with Josh Bonnici from the Bonnici Law Group. Really excited to have him today. This is another series of the fastest growing law firms in America. Josh was able to accomplish a 789% growth over the last couple of years. Super impressive. And, he's practicing a couple different stripes of law that a lot of people are interested in, like personal injury and Social Security disability litigation. So I'm really excited to hear what he has to say today. So thanks for being on the show, Josh.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Awesome. So we kind of gave the baseball card overview of, but it's always good. We like to start off with kind of a background story of how you got to where you are today.
During law school, I got all of my experience in a personal injury law firm down here in Southern California. Worked there for about 3.5 years. Ended up leaving there, took a job with a marketing company. I was the only attorney on payroll there, and we actually worked exclusively with lawyers selling legal marketing. Worked there for about a year, gained a bunch of different insight and business development ideas. Started my own practice at the end of 2012. And I'm actually celebrating 7 years of my own practice here at the end of October.
Yeah, it's a pretty interesting background. You don't hear a lot of people who, obviously you're a JD, but the thing is, from coming from a background of marketing, it usually seems to be one of those things that people will pick up later in their career. So that must have been a definite advantage to having a quick start in the practice.
I thought it was. When I opened my practice, I tried hard to not make it like a firm, but really aim it as a business that happens to practice law. Because I heard a stat, I don't know if it's a stat or just a fact a while back, saying that law firms fail but businesses succeed. So I've always kind of had my mantra being our good is legal services, but we have to kind of look at it as a churning business, even though we're not selling widgets. And so far, so good.
Yeah, no, that's a great mindset. And I would say it's kind of interesting. I've never heard that quote before about businesses succeeding and law firms failing, but given a lot of the advice that I feel like people are getting in law school these days, it kind of jives. People 7 years along the journey probably aren't at the same trajectory that you are. I feel like most people end up hanging the shingle, kind of doing the referral thing for a while and then kind of gradually slowing up. So could you take us back to, right after this time where you left the marketing company to open up the firm, what kind of stuff were you doing to get your first cases in the door?
Well, I started using a lot of the contacts I made in the marketing business because I was mainly working with attorneys. So I kind of reached out to a lot of my Southern California contacts, started doing a little bit of contract work with them, mainly on the disability and injury side, and then just started networking my butt off. That's kind of where got me where I was when I left the marketing company, was just kind of my grassroots, getting to know different attorneys and whatnot. And I just started having lunch and coffee with any attorney who would listen to me for 20 minutes, join a bunch of different networking groups, and just tried to be the lawyer that everyone knew and liked, and tried to kind of foster those relationships on a personal level. I'm kind of a people person, so I really wanted to foster those relationships into business and referrals, and then things just started growing from there once, the feet were hitting the pavement every day. I was probably at a networking event 3 times a week or so for a while, just getting my name out there, getting experience with my elevator pitch, and, really focusing on finding power partners for probably the first at least 2.5 years.
Yeah, so a lot of work, but it ended up paying off, it seems like, in the end. And I think it's kind of interesting, and tell me if this is right or not. I mean, if you were working with people that were retaining the marketing company, the attorneys that you were probably networking in those early days were probably a couple steps up than your average guy you'd find at a BNI, I'm guessing.
Yes. So the marketing I was selling for tens of thousands of dollars per campaign. So I was working with everyone from the solo practitioner who has a very well-established, business and been doing it for 30 years, or the 50 attorney law firm, really across the nation that, $1 billion business. I was able to kind of glean some information from them, see what worked, see how they thought, see how they kind of processed marketing, case retention, going from, lead to intake to case to either settlement or judgment, and trying to put all those things together and, making the connections that I thought I needed to kind of get started here down in Southern California.
Yeah. So basically you had not only sort of a case flow that was coming this, but also a bit of mentorship and some of these things that could take other people decades to figure out.
Oh, 100%. There's still mentors that I reach out to now that, I jokingly say I dedicate part of my practice to them because they've been so instrumental in, just helping me get my feet under me, help me take some risks every once in a while, and, kind of let me know that I'm not alone and just weird things happen, when you're dealing with clients or marketing, and just kind of keep that upward trajectory and focus. That was a huge help for sure.
Yeah. Just to kind of put a little parenthetical on that too, we recently just did an interview with our John Robbins from How to Manage a Small Firm. And he said, one of the most important things for leveling up your business and law practice is make sure the people that you're talking to are at the level that you want to be in 5 or 10 years. You don't really end up getting that perspective shift from people that are on the same level. So it looks like you did that pretty well. Now, as far as getting cases go, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, that's 100% right. One of my favorite questions to ask is, if you were to start all over and you were in my position now, what are 3 things that you would do with all the knowledge you have now in, case acquisition, in client retention, and just, the business side of opening a law firm? And it's always interesting to hear what people have to say.
Oh, so that was a question that you like to ask people.
My mentors, definitely. Yeah. When I sit down with them, with 25, 30 years of experience, okay, looking backwards, what would you have changed? What would you have done differently with the knowledge you have now?
Yeah. It's kind of interesting. That's actually a show. We've actually asked that question on the show a couple of times too. So it's funny. I think that's like a really powerful question. Yeah, it's like a great minds, hopefully. But okay, so you got this point where you've got a lot of these connections they've been working super hard to foster. And, I know, one of the big areas that you work in is personal injury law. And I know San Diego is a super competitive market. So what are you doing to get people to refer you cases instead of keep the cases in-house or refer to somebody who might be 10 or 20 years ahead of you?
Sure. The big thing that I try to do, and my belief on this is people send cases to people they like and they trust, right? And, I could probably tell you that I'm probably not the smartest personal injury attorney in San Diego. I do okay for myself, but there's guys here that have been litigating cases for 40 years and they're phenomenal attorneys, and I'll never take that away from them. But if I can be first of mind for someone that they like and trust, that's where I feel confident that I can get cases from other attorneys in town and other professionals. So that's kind of the big thing that I rely on. And differentiating myself and how I handle clients, they get my direct extension and email from the start. So they're not, going through gatekeepers and coming through me. So that personal touch with clients. And I think those are 2 main reasons why people tend to send business to me, amongst others.
Yeah. And it kind of, this is something that's come up on some previous episodes. And I think there's kind of a dilemma because I feel like a lot of people can kind of get stuck at the networking phase of expanding their business, because let's say you're going to those 2-3 networking meetings a week and, you're collecting, let's call it 5 or 10 business cards every single time. And some of these are valuable contacts, but you continue to go to these different meetings. And it kind of seems like, there's this growing pile of people that could potentially refer you. So what ways have you thought about that end up having, allow you to kind of get these organized in a way that allows you to stay on top of these relationships, identify the best ones, and make sure that this is working for you?
The first 2 or 3 years of my practice, I went out and I did the business card collecting, and I'd email people and let's meet for lunch and everything. And what I ended up doing is starting to kind of weed down people whom I connected with, whom I thought had just a traditional, what I like to call power partner relationship, where, they regularly see people who are ready to be clients of mine or, going to be or whatnot, and kind of weed those down. And then as I got busier and my time was more valuable, I would tend to focus on those people who are already sending me business or well-established type of power partners. So a great power partner for us right now is a workers' comp attorney who doesn't handle personal injury, right? They're seeing clients who are undergoing treatment for an injury, and that could turn over to either a personal injury case or it could turn over to a disability case. So now I may, gravitate towards those people rather than the loan officer down the street who's probably a great person and probably talks to a lot of people. But, what my Rolodex, I want a little bit more full and be a little bit more picky with people whom I think have more of a direct relationship with clients that I see and kind of the tried and true power partners I already have. So now if I go to just kind of an open networking event, I'm usually not really looking to meet a whole lot of new people. I try to find the people I know, and that kind of reminds me who I am, what I do to stay top of mind. And then I'll usually ask them for warm invites at that event to other people that they know and like and trust. Because then I've got a warm invite. I don't have to worry about kind of cold calling a business card. And, if there's kind of synergy there, then it's an easy thing to follow up on because we already have a mutual contact. It's been nice. I don't have that big stack of business cards on my desk anymore from events. Normally it might just be one or, information I just personally exchange because I think it would be a good relationship to have in the business.
So you're going deep more than broad.
Correct. Right. So I tend to look for, a handful of different people, either personalities or professions, and try to weed away some of the business card pushers anymore, and try to go deep with those people. Because in my mind, if I've got 5 people who are committed, know me, understand how to send me business, I don't have to constantly remind them or teach them how to send me clients. That's going to pay more dividends because I can almost leave them for a couple of months at a time without constant touches and running them who I am, without them sending me people. I just got a referral this morning for a trip and fall and a fracture locally here that I probably haven't talked to this attorney in a couple of months. He emailed me, made the introduction, and basically told me I was the first person he thought of. But I've have a business relationship referral-wise with this attorney for probably 5 years. But I know that what I've done in the past is solidified because he thought of me right away without even seeing him for several months.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. And, evidence to the fact that this approach is working. So switching gears a little bit. So, we're kind of gotten through the early days where we're getting a lot of this, the cases coming in and stuff like that. So let's talk a little bit about when you started to expand the firm. So what point did you decide to start hiring out?
So I decided to hire my first assistant on what I thought was 3 months too early, because I knew that hiring someone and teaching them my systems and getting them plugged in was going to take a little bit of time. And I knew that I didn't need them right where I was sitting, but looking at kind of my ledger of cases that I was going to need people coming up, I had cases in litigation, discovery that I needed to take care of. And so I hired somebody very beginning of 2013, a little earlier than I thought I would need them, but I got them ready to go, set up, and I was able to delegate a lot of administrative things to them so that it could free me up to just continue to go rainmake and focus on clients. I hired, so from there, they had to leave. I hired another person in their place whom in 2014, whom now actually works for me as an attorney because they were in law school. So she's been with me since 2014. And then I hired an assistant to replace her. She then graduated to be kind of our paralegal office manager. One of my law clerks passed the bar. He brought him on, and then we just recently hired a new assistant. So we're a team of 5 now. Beginning of the year. So it's been a little bit of a rapid growth model, but kind of with the number of cases that we have coming in and the load, it's working out fine right now. The budget's crossing off, and I think we're set for a while. I don't think I want to grow anymore. I think we found a kind of our good spot right now.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. We also had a recent podcast with Molly McGrath, who's a hiring consultant. It was just, it seems like you kind of hit it right out of the gate as far as hiring the people that that we're supporting your sort of zone of genius. So basically, I mean, more or less, you've been growing the firm in a direction where you can focus on the rainmaking, meeting those power partners, getting more cases into the door, right?
Right. That's always kind of been my goal, is to be that attorney who's kind of not necessarily behind the scenes, but focusing on what I think I do well and what I enjoy, handling a handful of cases, that I want to handle. But a majority of them are being handled by my associates, whom I look over, and my focus is on just that constant influx of leads coming in, screening clients, so that once they're in, they're here and they get the same level of service that I would provide them through people I've been training since the beginning.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about intake. So this has certainly been something that's been happening a lot on the case fuel side. So our business, where we're working with attorneys a bit as well. One of the things that we've seen is that a lot of firms are seeing a lot of slack being picked up and potentially tightening up their intake process. So I know it seems like you guys have a really awesome system going on, whatever it is. So what's kind of the situation for when a lead ends up coming to the firm? I mean, obviously, you have a lot of stuff to do, so I'm guessing you're not taking this personally, but what usually ends up happening when somebody's calling the firm?
Well, we actually have a dedicated cell phone where new clients call in. So when you call our main number, it says, if you're a new client looking for a free consultation, please dial extension 111. When that phone rings, whoever is kind of holding that phone answers, puts down whatever they're doing, and answers the phone, so that we don't have to worry about chasing any leads back. And then we pretty much have a normalized intake system that we do to kind of evaluate the case. What type of case is it? How does liability look? We have our checklist that we go through. That usually takes about 10 minutes. Try to keep it short and sweet. And then if it's one of the attorneys who are handling the call, usually it is, then they pretty much have discretion on whether or not they want to bring that person in, sign them up over the phone or whatnot, and get it started. We try to keep everything within that initial call if we can. Ideally, we schedule them to come in that day. My entire staff have control of my calendar, and they can make appointments for me if it's open. So if I'm on the other line, someone's taking the call of a new client, they realize it sounds like a good case, they have the freedom to put that P&C on my calendar during an open spot for that day or the next day to get them in so that we can get things rolling. They give me the intake, I review it, and then usually have a follow-up call to make sure they're coming in, and new client comes in, and we hopefully sign them up.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see how that's come together. And for anyone who's kind of taking notes, if growth is a priority in your law firm, you have to do what Josh is doing right here, because if you're kind of reading between the lines here, and it seems like the priority is really here. So if anyone has the ability to take a call, you're getting them on the phone with an attorney right away. You're prioritizing getting everything done from an intake perspective, and you're getting them in the office to actually close the deal, which is something that I feel that so many people end up missing the mark on. And ultimately it leads to less business. So if people say the priority is growth, you got to put your money where your mouth is and make it actually a priority over other things. I mean, speaking as far as the systems and processes as well, it seems like a lot of these things are pretty dialed in for your firm, Josh. So can you tell me how you sort of built these and transitioned from the point where you were handling this all and growing this to a team that seems like it's running like a well-oiled machine today?
Well, I read a bunch of marketing and business building books, and I think there's an easy consensus out there on, the more things that you can process down and proceduralize, which I think I'm probably making up a word, but I'll hold on to that. For each part of your practice, I think is going to just pay dividends. I started making lists on, okay, when I do this, this is how I would want intake to be done. This is how I want a closing letter to a client after we settle a case to read and to feel and to see. This is what I want our welcome packet that we send out to kind of shock and awe new clients, how I want it to look, how I want it to read. And so once I put that into a one-page procedural list, then hopefully if we've got somebody who buys into our system, it's happening the same every single time, and it's kind of foolproof. When we brought on our fifth employee, she came on, didn't have any legal experience, which sometimes I actually like for when I'm hiring an assistant. And we were able to plug her in with our procedural kind of handbook. And within 2 weeks, she was doing almost everything we needed her to do, because she knew how to do it, because she knew exactly what her what her position tasks were, how to do these things. When I came up and I handed something to her and said, hey, here's a settlement check, I need a letter with a delivery to client, they know exactly what that means. They have the template in their system, and all I have to do is sign off on the letter, and it goes out. So that's been one of the biggest important.
So when you mentioned a couple books, would you mind, what are your favorite books around the subject or anything else that you found valuable?
The duct tape marketing book I really liked. It's definitely not aimed at lawyers, but I think, like I said, I try to look at my company as a business, right? I enjoyed the E-Myth attorney book, of course.
All right. And then the second thing too is that, I'm also kind of noticing as we go through this story, I'm not hearing about too many people not being a good fit for the firm. So it seems like you might have hit on something right as far as the hiring process goes to get these people that are more or less ready to rock in 2 weeks, like this example you had. So is there anything you can share with us as far as how you're finding these people, the hiring process you're using, or anything to get like a solid team under you?
Well, I've been really fortunate with the team that I've built. The two attorneys I have were working for me either as an assistant or a clerk for about 2 years prior. So I knew their work product. I knew their personality. We'd already kind of worked as a team to begin with. So those were kind of nice, easy shoo-ins. When I hire assistants, those are people that I really have no relationship with. But I focus when I'm hiring an assistant who's not doing heavy legal work based on personality. And that's kind of two reasons that I focus on that. The first is I want them to gel with the team that I already have going, right? They could be the smartest and brightest person ever, but if they're not getting along with some of the other attorneys in my office, they're, being a cancer here, then what good is that really doing? And second, I try to mimic how I would handle and deal with clients on a personal basis through my firm. So I want someone who's going to be compassionate. I want someone who's going to be a good listener to clients and have that good demeanor when speaking with our clients. So I think it's good for them to gel with our clients as well. So that's one of the first things I focus on. The assistants I've hired in the past, I think only one has had any legal experience, and it wasn't in personal injury. I feel like with our procedural lists, I can teach you what you need to know. I'm not worried about that. They're not putting together briefs. They're not filing motions for me. They're mainly kind of feet on the ground with clients, with insurance adjusters, and I can teach you how to do that. And it kind of falls in line once they buy into kind of our firm's mission and our goals that they see every day.
We're talking about a lot of soft skills here. Is this something that you're able to assess based on an initial interview, or do you have any sort of additional stages you get in before you're making a hire?
Well, I usually get at least one or two other people in my office involved in interviewing. For instance, when I've hired this last receptionist, we put applications out on a couple of just, your normal hiring websites. We would get, 2 or 3 dozen applications back. But what I would do in the ad is I would make it kind of long on purpose. I want people to read through it, and I would give really straightforward but simple instructions on how to apply. Like I would literally have them put in, I want the subject line of your email back to read, "I am your rock star." That's kind of my thing, is I call my assistants my rock stars. And if they don't put that in there, then I don't even open it because I know they can't follow instructions, right? So if I have 25 applications that come through, I'm pretty confident that 17 of them will be clickable because some people just won't read. And then what I'll do is I'll say, in your email that you title "I am your rock star," I want you to answer these 4 questions. And they're easy kind of softball questions. Name 2 or 3 things that you're good at. What's a perfect day off for you? Things like that. So that I can kind of get to know them a little bit, see their casual writing style, and also see how much they give me. Are they just giving me a 1-line sentence about each thing because they're blazing through resumes, or are they going to sit there and actually put a little time into it and try to show personality? That's kind of what I want. So out of the 17, maybe 10 of those answer correctly. Then we have about a 10-minute phone call with one of my other assistants that calls them and interviews them. And I bring them to my office after that, and I say, "What do you think?" And she may say, well, out of these 10, I really liked these 4. Some of them I didn't click with. Some were late. Some didn't show. I said, okay, great. Bring those 4 into the office and we'll do interviews. And that's how I edit those down and really kind of get a feeling for who these people are, with already having a little bit of a sense of who they are before they even step in my office, because they've answered questions. We've already had a telephone conversation, and then we kind of get to see who they are in person and have a little bit more of a conversation rather than a question and answer period once they're here.
Yeah, it's super, super clever. That's the first time I've ever heard about actually using team members in the process to kind of assess how well they'll gel, but that's a super good technique. So, all right, I think you mentioned not needing to hire for a little bit, but besides that, what's next for the firm? I mean, we've got some pretty serious growth in the last couple of years. What are you planning to do next?
Well, I'm probably going to be restructuring a little bit on how each team member here is going to be handling different tasks. My goal is to really transfer over at the beginning of the new year to dealing mainly with business development, handing a lot of my cases out to my associates, and really try to turn that up. I've got some pretty good, some new ideas for next year, some goals. So I think that's probably the next thing on the list. I'm not planning on growing too much more anytime soon. My office is full, so there's that. But a lot of my day is directing people here in the office too. I usually have an law school intern or two also. So I have an open door policy where people can come in if my door's open, ask me questions. So that does take up a lot of my time. I do want to hold on to a handful of cases at a time. I could see myself possibly hiring a paralegal in maybe 2 or 3 years, if the case still kind of dictates that. But right now, I think it's a good size, it's a good fit for kind of what I want to do moving into the future.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of interesting too. A lot of people, when you talk about growth, it's like, they have these really, and you've had some absolutely fantastic growth in the last 3 years, but it's actually really refreshing to hear that, somebody say that what they have is enough. It's not something you hear a lot in the business world sometimes, but no, that's super awesome. Now, as far as, if anyone wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way to reach out?
Well, my website is www.bonnicilawgroup.com. That's BONNICI. And that'll probably be one of the better ways where we have a presence on Facebook as well. We handle all types of personal injury cases in Southern California, as well as Social Security disability appeals and ERISA long-term disability appeals all throughout the state of California.
All right, awesome. So yeah, if anyone's in the area and needs to reach out or anything related to that, absolutely feel free to reach out. But Josh, thank you so much for taking the time. I think everyone else, if you're listening to this, it's a rare, almost a royal flush we got here with a lot of systems, process, good hiring, and of course the marketing that's ending up driving it. So definitely worth a listen. That's something that you guys are, definitely worth a re-listen, like I like to say. But thank you so much for coming on the show, Josh.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks, guys. And we'll be here next week with another episode of the Law Firm Growth Podcast.
Thank you for listening to the Law Firm Growth Podcast. For show notes, free resources, and more, head on over to casefuel.com/podcast. Looking forward to catching up on the next episode.